final chapter review is on chapter 24, which is the Texas Judiciary Branch. Laws based on the Constitution. There are two types of laws. There's civil law and then there's criminal law. Civil law, of course, is non-criminal legal disputes. We have different jurisdictions in the state. Original jurisdiction, where cases are heard for the first time. So we live in Dallas County. So the first place a case will be heard if you filed an issue here in Dallas County would be in Dallas County. The appellate jurisdiction, which when cases have been ruled on in a lower court and then they're sent to a higher court to determine if anything needs to change. So that's called the appellate jurisdiction. So let's say you filed the case and you disagree with the ruling, then you would file an appeal to what the ruling had to say. This is kind of what Trump has been doing throughout this election. He's filed one lawsuit and it didn't go through, so he appealed that, and that hasn't gone through yet either. So, but that's the process. The structure of our judicial branch, we have municipal courts. That's where you go pay your tickets and things of that nature, your traffic tickets, city ordinances, that's where the constables deliver warrants and things like that. You have a justice of the peace. Excuse me, that's a small claims court. You might be suing somebody for something less than $200. That's where that goes. So you have municipal court, justice of the peace. Then you have our county courts, and this really happens a lot in our rural areas. 3 courts at this level. You have the Constitutional County Court. Because we have 254 counties in the state of Texas, if you didn't know that, now you know. Then there are 254 constitutional county courts because there's one in every county. Excuse me. Civil cases go from $200 to up to $5,000, and they're usually, if they see any criminal cases, it's usually a A or B misdemeanor. Statutory probate court. This is usually where you have things around mental health issue or guardianship issues. And our county courts help relieve the burden of some of our courts in our more urbanized areas from the appellate court. Excuse me. Next, after the county courts, you have district courts. This is your trial court. There's one of these in each county, and they hear criminal and civil cases as well in district court. So you have a case is filed in your district court. You disagree with the ruling. You now file an appeal. So that's the Court of Appeals, and that's part of the appellate jurisdiction. Texas has 14 Court of Appeals jurisdictions. There's a Chief Justice and 2 other justices that are part of the appellate court, our Court of Appeals. Dallas has 13 justice positions. That's Dallas, the city of Dallas, county of Dallas. On the criminal side, the highest court is the Court of Criminal Appeals. That's on the criminal side. Highest state court for criminal appeals is the Criminal Court of Appeals. It has 8 judges. Cases can only be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court from here. So let's say you disagree with the final ruling that came out of the Court of Criminal Appeals and you want to pursue your case further. It now will have to be a case that you would present before the United States Supreme Court if it made it that far. Texas Supreme Court is our highest civil court. It has final jurisdiction on all civil and juvenile cases. And there's a Chief Justice, and then there are 8 other judges. So in the event that you have a case that's a civil case and you disagree and you take it all the way up, once a ruling comes out of the Supreme Court, then that is the ruling for the state. How do you become a judge? A municipal judge. There are local areas that decide the qualifications depending on where you live. Most of our municipal judges are appointed by city councils. In our justice of the peace, you have elected officials. They serve 4-year terms, and you need not necessarily have a license to practice law. So you do not need to be a licensed attorney to be a justice of the peace. And remember what I said, justice of the peace, what kind of cases they hear. Constitutional county clerks, they too are elected 4-year terms. Also not required to be a lawyer to be a county court judge. and your salary is usually about $57,000 a year. It's probably changed a little bit by that. In the statutory county courts and the court at law, your judges must have a law degree. They're elected to 4-year terms, and their salary is the same, around $57,000 a year. So that's what happens. So there are several judgeships that do not require you to have a law degree. This one here, as a statutory court or court of law, does. District courts, you have to be a citizen of the United States, licensed to practice law in the state of Texas, have to have resided in the state of Texas for 2 years. You are elected to a 4-year term position. So our district court judges are elected by we, the people. So if we want to see some different things happen in our criminal justice system as it relates to sentencing and things of that nature, then we need to make sure that when it's time to vote for these positions and these judgeships, that we actually show up to vote for them. Court of Appeals, Court of Criminal Appeals, and the Texas Supreme Court. So in the Court of Appeals, you have to, you serve a 4-year term, and you have to live in the district that you represent. It's a statewide election. You have to be licensed to practice law in the state of Texas, a citizen of the United States and Texas, at least 35 years of age, and you should have been practicing law or in a judgeship for 10 years previously. So one of the questions we often get asked is whether or not our judiciary is for sale. Texas is one of only 8 states that still elect judges. Candidates launch statewide elections, and there is money needed for those elections. So because there's money, there's so much money in politics and so much money in campaigning and elections, are the people that represent us in our judicial branch for sale because of the amount of money that they receive from donors and things of that nature? Can their decisions be bought because of a donation that was made to their campaign? And so that becomes the question as to whether or not they can remain fair and impartial when they have been funded by a certain type of organization. So that's a good question. Is our judiciary for sale? And that completes our chapter reviews for chapters 22, 23, and 24.